Edward Adu and the PR consultant Paul Charles, and there they are now. It's great to have both of you waking up bright and early to join us here. Now look, we've got a lot to go through, but before we do, we cannot ignore the big story that's going on. I just want to get your views and your take and your predictions very quickly on the football. So we have obviously the Lionesses. It's a big day for them today. Edward, I'll come to you there. The momentum for women's football is completely shifting now, isn't it?
Oh, it's brilliant. I mean, on my radio shows this week, I've spoken to some local players in the Northamptonshire area who have been overjoyed at this point, and I think that they're overjoyed because of the way women's football, the way it's been celebrated, the way it's been embraced. And I think the question we should all ask is, why has it taken so long for us to get behind the Lionesses and for women's football to be finally respected? And I think previously it's been down to sponsorship, it's been down to lack of awareness. And, I jokingly said, well, I don't think it's a joke. I think, the women are better than the men's team. I mean, how many times have, not so much under Southgate, but previous managers have the men tried to get to a certain position and they haven't got there, and the Lionesses are in the perfect place, and they've done us proud. So I think what we need to take from this is the kind of legacy. It's about partnership, sponsorship. It's about the awareness. It's about making sure that women's football is respected and it can get to the place where it can get to. And I think it's got to the pinnacle. And hopefully tonight, I think it's going to be 3-1. That's my Edward Tortoise Adu prediction.
And I'll come to you then, Paul. Edward will take that prediction and we'll run with it and hope that it comes true. And Paul then, I mean, as Edward was saying, hoping that actually this brings women's football on par with the men's football when it comes to, sponsorships, for example, and the amounts of money that's pumped into the game.
Yeah, I'm going to raise Edward. I'm going to say it's 4-1 to Germany tonight. And it's great to see it. Great to see it in the mainstream. I mean, obviously, we should temper those expectations because Germany beat the England women's team, of course, back in 2009. So let's hope we've learned from that. And I think the expectation is much more real this time. There's a feeling that it's in the mainstream, that the support is real, that the quality of the game has improved so much over the last 10 years or so. And there's every reason why, in front of a home crowd, we should be winning this. So yeah, I think it's going to be a successful afternoon tonight.
Fantastic, that's a great note there. And Edward, let me come to you then. Let's talk about, I don't know if you've heard, but there's a Tory leadership campaign going on. I mean, we are not going to hear the end of it. 5th of September comes in and then of course things will cool down. But until then, this is the era that we're in. This is the moment. So looking at the front page of the Sunday Telegraph there, this story emerging that Rishi Sunak planning to fine anybody who misses a GP appointment £10. What do you make of this? Does this just show that he's a little bit out of touch? Because in a cost of living crisis, £10 is a lot of money.
£10 is a lot. I mean, even when you go to your local takeout, you can't get a meal for £5 anymore. So, I mean, if you miss your appointment, this is under the proposals being proposal Mr. Sunak wants to bring in. The problem is when I totally adore our NHS and it's a brilliant institution. But when it comes to the admin, when it comes to text, or when you're trying to get an appointment, or if you don't have the right details. So, for example, if you're booked in and then suddenly the receptionist at your local surgery says, "I'll send you a text," and you don't get the text, and then suddenly, under the proposals by Rishi Sunak, you get a fine for £10. Again, it's going to be hitting the hardest hit in society, and that's the only problem. The issue is there's 50 million people who miss appointments a year, and that's an issue which needs to be addressed. But then again, that could be resolved by overhauling the system, making sure that, and I'm not discrediting the admin team at the NHS, but previously I've had issues where with video calls, with text. I mean, for example, when it comes to video calls, it's been implemented. We seem to be doing it more post-COVID or doing it now. And if you're sent a link and it doesn't work, so if that happens to you, Vanessa, or to Paul, then is it fair for you to be fined because you've tried to click on that link and you can't actually get your appointment? So it seems a good idea, but I think it needs to be looked into if it's implemented, if Rishi Sunak becomes PM.
Absolutely.
I think Rishi Sunak's a bit all over the place on this,
Well,
actually.
he has actually, Paul. I was just going to ask you, looking at the front page of The Observer there, he's being urged to change tax before it's too late. But actually, is it too late?
Well, he's confusing messages, and on the NHS, the real reason he supported the national insurance increase, of course, on employees was so that he could pump a lot more money into the NHS. So I think there's some confusion about what his NHS policy is, but the Observer is picking up on the fact that perhaps he's too slick, he needs to change tactics before it's too late, especially with the ballot papers going to 160,000 or so Conservative members this week. There's no doubt his campaign has got off to a weaker start than Liz Truss, and he has a huge amount to do to pick up more momentum. He can do it, but he's got to stick to the policies that Conservative members are interested in, and that means lower taxes. And the problem is he's set his stall out as being a future leader who is into raising taxes, and that's not gone down well with core Conservative members who want the party to be the aspiration party. So there's a lot to do to change his campaign, and that means being on the front foot in a clearer way with more policies, but policies which are more positive and not the austere negative ones that, of course, we saw so much during the Cameron and Osborne years.
Absolutely. Well, let's just come to a story that's absolutely dominated this week. You just couldn't have failed to notice this. So Colleen Rooney and Rebecca Vardy, Wagatha Christie. I mean, what's your take on what's happened? The verdict, the decision that the judge made, Edward, did it surprise you?
It didn't surprise me. It's something that it's a film, and obviously Hollywood producers apparently are interested. There's been lots of phone calls being made to try and turn this into a film. My initial concern was when this came through in the news, look, this is a private issue which should not have ended up in the High Court. When you've got issues with Ukraine, you've obviously got the Conservative Party, you've got the leadership, and this ends up being front page, and it's like the main item of news stories. You've got to question in terms of its viability. Why did it end up here? And obviously you've got to think with Vardy being expected. I mean, I think the cost is going to run up on, I think, £3 or £4 million. But then it doesn't end here. You know, apparently Colleen Rooney wants to. Well, she may proceed to take further action, but based on data protection. I mean, this could go on and on and on to the point where you've got to kind of feel for Vardy and think, well, look, you know, you could have settled this. You could have made a call. You could have said, look, I've done this. I'm going to fess up. I've done this. Let's close the door. Let's move on. But it didn't. It escalated. It got muddy. It became, you know, public news, public domain. Everybody knows about what happened. And I think going forward, it's about reputation. It's about credibility. You know, and how is Vardy going to move on from this and be able to? Because, you know, on social media, I'm not going to repeat some of the stuff that people said on social media, not just from my friends, but generally. And I think it's down to credibility, and it's down to people who I think kind of share the same notion. Why wasn't this settled out of court?
Absolutely. That is the question, isn't it, Paul? Because we're looking at costs of up to about £3 million, and many people will be thinking, why didn't the two just settle it among themselves before making it so public?
I think they've both been badly advised. I work in the reputation business, and there's no doubt both of their reputations have taken a knock, despite Colleen Rooney successfully winning this case so far, before any appeal, of course, which we may yet see. But in a cost of living crisis, their advisors should have said, settle this out of court, don't go all the way, because you'll only make it more embarrassing that you're talking about millions of pounds in money being paid over for defence teams and lawyers at a time when most of their usual fans can't even afford their energy heating. So let's face this, this is a situation where they both should have settled, and if the millions come about from the film rights that Edward was talking about, then clearly some of that money should be going into charities, etc. And I think we haven't seen from Colleen Rooney yet something around where she's going to put the money that she'll make in terms of the defence fees being paid back to her.
And actually, as many people were saying, the real winners here really were those lawyers who took home all of those millions
Indeed,
of pounds,
they
right?
did. They took the money, and I think Paul raises a good point there in terms of where the money will go. And I think the cost of living crisis.
Absolutely.
I'm no strategist or advisor, but it probably will be best for some of the proceeds to go to charity.
Edward, it's been great speaking to you, and also Paul. And I know we'll see you in the next hour, so don't go too far.
See you
and we'll
soon.
see you.
Did you win the
in a few
lottery?
minutes' time.
Vanessa, did you win the lottery? Did you win the lottery?